If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to Downfall Network for more cool content. What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I am Necrotic, and I am back with another very large collection update. Got a wide array of different stuff in here, kind of ranging from like death metal, some noise metal, some kind of weird alternative metal in here too, sludge, all sorts of stuff. So we're just gonna get right into this. Acacia Strain, Slow Decay. This is their new album, and I thought about doing a review on this one, at least with Jam and John, but we kind of didn't get around to it. This is a really solid album. These guys are pretty much straightforward deathcore, but I think they're starting to include a lot more ambiance in their sound. There's some industrial loops on here, and they always have some flat-out nods to just straight-up hardcore. Now, of course, since it's Acacia Strain, it is definitely Breakdown City, but these guys just craft some insanely heavy stuff. It is unrelenting. It kind of gets a little dull towards the middle, but it closes very strong. Solid album from them. I think it's a really good continuation on what they did on their EP that we reviewed a while ago. Solid stuff. Definitely check it out. Alright, now we got a pair here. A double release from Old Man Gloom. Light of Meaning, Darkness of Being. Now this is kind of a noise metal, sludge metal supergroup. Has Aaron Turner from ISIS, Stephen Brodsky from Cave-In, Mutoid Band, and the late Caleb Schofield, who was also in Cave-In. Now I believe these might be his final recordings, at least with this band, unless they have some other stuff they're gonna plan on unearthing later, but I think it probably is. This is just insane noise metal, but it's noise metal with hooks. And as much as I don't like all the noisy interludes and stuff that leads into the tracks, it's kind of cool finding cool songs within those. There are all sorts of samples of stuff, like machinery noises, just scraping whatever. I think there's even a sample of like a hailstorm on someone's car or a roof or something, just to add that level of heavy noise to it. Now, I do have to say, like, I think I like Light of Meaning a little bit better. There are some really, really solid tracks, namely Calling You Home, I think is one of the best tracks in this entire two-piece here. But there's also some really good stuff on Darkness of Being, like, namely Death Rhymes, which is this cool acoustic dirge that was really, really catchy. And I have to say, like, I really enjoyed this. Now, there's a lot of stuff to sift through in terms of, like, that noisy ambience, but if you're into that, definitely check this out. And, I mean, honestly, if you're into noise metal, there's a good chance you've already checked this out. But definitely check out Old Man Gloom, check out any other releases, but these two are really solid. Heresy Blasphemia. Man, does she look like she's having fun on this cover. Anyway, this is a thrash band from Costa Rica, and this album flat out rips. These guys actually commented when I pulled this out of the Metalhead box, and I had actually seen this album before, I just hadn't picked it up. And I'm super glad I got this because this is just some ripping thrash metal. Lots of nods to Bay Area and also like 90s thrash because it's a little bit heavier. Vocals are kind of this almost tuneful shriek, and man, do they have some killer instrumentals on here. I absolutely love this album start to finish. Like, this was just ripping, high energy, lots of cool song structure, great riffs, leads. Like, it pretty much just checks off everything for solid thrash. So if you haven't heard these guys before, definitely check them out. I'm definitely on the hunt for more of their stuff for sure, because I definitely dug this. So check it out. Northwind Wolves, Mountains and Darkness. This is the other one that came in the Metalhead box, and this is a symphonic blackened death metal band. I believe they are from California, actually LA. And this actually includes at least one ex-member of the Faceless, which, if we're gonna be honest, there's a lot of ex-members of the Faceless out there. So that's kind of a thing. But this is really interesting stuff. Like, it kind of reminds me of early Abigail Williams in terms of like their first album, where they were including more synths in there, more symphonic stuff, and like early Dimmu Borgir. I think it's a little synth heavy, like some of the synths you really just kind of want to get away from after a while, but there's a lot of solid riffs on here. The vocals definitely favor more black metal, and I have to say the synths don't come off as cheesy. I just think they're a bit much in terms of just being very forward in the mix and almost always present. I could use a break from them, just let the riffs sing out. That's just me personally. But overall, I dug this album. It was a pretty solid listen. I do have to say some of the songs did run into each other a little bit because style-wise and structure-wise they're kind of similar. but they're good. So at least that's a good kind of similar. But yeah, definitely check this band out. It was pretty solid. Mgla Age of Excuse. I believe that's how you pronounce it. At least that's what it said on Encyclopedia Metalum. It's Mgla. I think that's it. Anyway, this is a Polish black metal band, and a little bit of controversy around them. I don't know if it's all entirely founded, so I'm going to stay away from that subject there. But this is a two-man black metal band that is extraordinary. Like, in terms of songwriting, creating dissonant atmosphere. Very similar to Gaerea, which we just reviewed on here, and yeah, more about them later. But in terms of the overall appearance, it's very similar. Shrouded faces. I have to say the production here is different than Gaerea. This is definitely more like raw production, I guess. The drums on here are absolutely fantastic. The drum work is incredible. And in terms of building that creepy, just dissonant, depressive atmosphere, these guys absolutely nailed it. I'm gonna have to check out more by these guys for sure, but this is definitely worthy of all the hype, and I'm a bit of a late bloomer to this band just because, I don't know, they kind of flew under the radar for me, and there's tons of other stuff out there I keep picking up. But I definitely enjoyed this. This is an incredible listen. So yeah, definitely check this out. Pilori A Nos Mortis. This is a French grindcore slash crust punk slash black metal slash hardcore band, and pretty much they embody all of that. Like, right away, as soon as I started listening to this, it reminded me of Nails with black metal parts. The vocals are drenched in static. It has a sludgy, nasty tone. It is bass heavy too. Like, when I listen to this in my car, because I have a system, the bass is very up in the mix, and it just makes this just that much more dense. This is a really cool blend of all those styles. Like, you get those DB grooves, you get flat out hardcore breakdowns, straight up like grind blast sections, and this is all about dissonance and just pummeling the hell out of you. All these songs are super short. I think the shortest one in here doesn't even clock 40 seconds. And it's only like 23 minutes long, but it is immersive as hell. I dug the hell out of it. It's one of the most energetic releases I've heard this year, like just in terms of just being raw and nasty and unapproachable, which is awesome. That's exactly what I look for in terms of the style of music. Definitely check this band out. This is their debut album, so they're just getting off to a really, really good start. Check it out. I promise if you like any of those styles I mentioned, you will not be disappointed. Alright, and here we have a pair from Teratism. This one is The Human Animal Preserved, and this one is Service for the Damned. Now, this is a short-lived band from Massachusetts. They're sort of brutal death metal, and a couple of the members went on to join the band Abnormality after this. Pretty much broke up after this album, and yeah, it's straight up brutal death. Not particularly well recorded, especially this one. The drums sound terrible on here. The bass drum is a flat thud, and it has that plunky snare that I just don't like. Yeah, that's just kind of me. But overall, the production is very muddy, but a lot of the songs are pretty solid, I have to say. Like, it is straight up brutal death metal. It definitely worships at the throne of like Suffocation, Dying Fetus, Baphomet, all that shit. But it's definitely hampered by the production. I have to say though, one thing I really enjoyed in this was the fact that they sampled Brad Dourif's speech in Exorcist 3, where he's just talking about murdering people in the cell. If you've ever seen that movie, definitely check it out. It's a worthy sequel. But yeah, overall this one didn't impress me much. You know, cover's pretty cool. This one was a little bit better, I have to say. Like, the production was a little bit better. Like, the drums at least sounded, you know, improved, but overall it had a more full sound, and I think the songs seemed more fleshed out. This one also employed a bit more in the way of like slam-ish breakdowns too, and I have to say it worked out, except for the interesting outro on this one. It's just a straight up acoustic number that just feels kind of oddly placed, and like it was like an afterthought and thrown on there. But overall, this was an interesting band. Only 2 releases, and I found these both, you know, used for a decent price, so I just decided to pick them up. And not too bad. You know, definitely could use some work, but if you like brutal death metal and like early kind of slamish stuff, you might dig it. So check them out. Stillbirth, Revive the Throne. This came out this year on Unique Leader, and this is straight up brutal death metal slash slam, maybe touches of deathcore. I have to say right away, I love the cover. The cover reminds me of Bolt Thrower, and there's lots of cool references to other characters in the crowd here. If you can see, well, you'll see it on that art up here. Jason Voorhees, there's some Cenobites in there. I was like, dude, okay, this is pretty cool. And I have to say, like, this is very fun deathcore, slam, brutal death, whatever you want to call it. I think brutal death is pretty much all-encompassing here. Lots of movie samples. The vocals are kind of all over the place, like low pig squeals to, you know, gurgly grunts to just straight up almost kind of hardcore shouts. Heavy as hell, and it very well should be, considering they have 3 guitarists and 2 bassists, which I don't quite see the point for that much. And really, when you break down the instrumentation, there isn't a lot of stuff that really required that, but that's their thing. I guess wearing matching Hawaiian shorts is also their thing too, at least from the video I saw. But I have to say, it's very riffy. There's a lot of catchy riffs on here that I really dug, and overall it was fun to listen to, even though this isn't necessarily my style. Like, I'm not the biggest slam fan, but this was fun. This was just entertaining to listen to, and there were some solid hooks on it. So yeah, definitely check this band out. They were a lot of fun. I don't get why they need all the extra members, but, you know, whatever. If it makes them heavier, it makes them heavier, I guess. Check it out. Night Demon, Darkness Remains. I kept hearing songs by these guys, and I figured it was about time for me to actually pick up an album. These guys are a flat-out trad metal / old school heavy metal band, though they are relatively new. This is only their 2nd release, I believe, in terms of full lengths. They have a lot of singles, and I believe an EP and another album before this, which I definitely want to pick up. This is just really fun metal to listen to, like flat out. Like, it's very melody driven, a lot of that early Killers vibe, you know, from like Iron Maiden there. Solid vocals, even though I think they're a little bit more rock oriented. Like, it doesn't necessarily sound like what you'd expect from trad metal, which is generally more like in that higher range, but they're really good. And everything about this feels fiercely 80s. In fact, the song Dawn Rider sounds like it should be intro to some 80s TV show. I just could not get away from that feeling. Like, the chorus, whenever they repeat the name Dawn Rider, it just, I kept getting like a vision of like some 80s cartoon intro, you know, which was always more flashy than the actual show, or like something like Knight Rider. But this is just fun to listen to. I love the riffs. The bass work on here is really good. And there's a awesome instrumental on here, Flight of the Manticore, which I absolutely loved. Really solid stuff. Definitely want to pick up more by these guys. I really enjoyed the singles that I've heard for, I guess, an upcoming release, maybe an EP or a full length, but really good stuff. Definitely check this out. This is a fun little throwback. King Buzzo, The Gift of Sacrifice. Now, this is his new album he did with Trevor Dunn from Mr. Bungle, or formerly of Mr. Bungle. I don't know if he's still in the band. I haven't really checked. I know the new Mr. Bungle track that they put out is absolutely ripping. It's thrash as hell. I just couldn't believe how thrashy it was. Anyway, back to this. This is pretty much King Buzzo, Buzz Osborne, pretty much doing an acoustic thing. There's no percussion on here. This is all acoustic guitar and I believe stand-up bass. At least most of the bass lines sound as though they're on a stand-up bass, and weird soundscapes. I mean, honestly, if you added distortion and drums to this, you pretty much get a Melvins album, I would say. And I think, honestly, just the tone on this is very dark overall. Like, there's definitely some weird little whimsical moments, because Melvins is odd. It's really hard to categorize what they do because they're just fiercely them. But if you added that, I think you get a pretty heavy Melvins album. Like, there's some really dark, foreboding stuff on here, and it surprised me because it's just acoustic stuff, but it actually has that sort of dark Melvins feel to it. I don't know, it's an interesting listen. Not something that I would jam all the time because it's mostly just weird, and I kind of need some percussion here, but I did enjoy it, and it's a fun listen, and King Buzzo is still quite a writer. I miss old Melvins though. I want some heavy Melvins albums again for sure. But either way, check it out. It's a good listen. Lantern, Dimensions. This is their new album, came out on Dark Descent. This is a Finnish blackened death metal band, and this is some pretty solid stuff. I think the recording is a little muted on here, and almost everything on here really reminded me of like a more Black and Death, Morbid Angel, especially the David Vincent era, because the frontman's intonation is very similar to David Vincent. Like, he has that sort of, you know, kind of dramatic delivery that he has. Not quite as good as David Vincent because, I mean, he's still a fantastic vocalist when it comes down to those awesome death metal vocals, but it's really good. And this is just a really interesting listen. It's a good balance of riffs and atmosphere. I have to say I don't like the clean vocal break on here. It just seemed forced, like the clean vocals really weren't very catchy. But I have to say the last track, which is like 11 minutes long, is absolutely amazing. Monolithic Abyssal Dimensions. That song is just a 11-minute riff fest. Loads of just killer songwriting on that. And I think, honestly, I would like to hear more of that on the rest of the album because there's some really good stuff on here. But that song just stood out as just, well, monolithic compared to the rest. Really solid album. I definitely want to check out more. And I'd say if you're into black and death metal, this is definitely worth checking out for sure. Nug Alter Ego. This is the debut album from this Ukrainian progressive post-metal band. At least that's what they described them as. I would say it's very genty post-metal, at least in spots. It gets very polyrhythmic, and it kind of borrows a little bit from both sides there. I don't think it does as much of the post-metal stuff in terms of like building atmosphere, though that is on here. It's not the level as you would hear in like a Neurosis album or Cult of Luna album, which I'd say Cult of Luna is relatively comparable here. There's also a lot of Tool stuff on here. Like, I was kind of shocked to hear some very like Tool-like staccato riffs, like in terms of breakdowns, and there are some bass lines here that just scream Justin Chancellor. Really solid songwriting though. Like, I think progressive might not be the right word for this, but very heavy post-metal, and I really enjoyed this. This is really good. Nice, long listen, very immersive. Vocals are kind of pushed back in the mix just so you can hear more of the music, and while it's not as layered as a lot of the stuff that I listen to in terms of post-metal, I really like how heavy it is. And if you're a big fan of post-metal or prog metal, or mostly post-metal, definitely check this out. This was a solid debut. I'm definitely going to be listening to this a lot more. Doom. Total Doom. This is a compilation of Doom, one of the probably most influential crust punk slash, you know, like proto-grind bands out there. Like, it's mostly punk for sure, but there's definitely elements of grindcore on here. These guys I kind of ignored for a while, and I definitely shouldn't have because I love the hell out of this. I actually liked a lot of the earlier stuff from the Splits more than I liked the stuff on War Crimes slash Inhuman Being, but all of this was thoroughly enjoyable. I love crust punk, and I felt as though I was missing out on this band, and I definitely was because I love this compilation. It includes a lot of stuff in here. There are 37 tracks on here, so yeah, you pretty much get quite the heaping helping of all things crust, and I absolutely loved it. Great production, the flat-out fuck you attitude. I mean, that's what you're looking for in punk. If you've never heard Doom before, definitely check him out. I am such a late bloomer to this, I almost feel ashamed, but I definitely want to get some more stuff by Doom because this was a lot of fun to listen to. So definitely check this out. Orange Goblin, Time Traveling Blues. This was their second album, came out in 1998, and this is a stoner rock band from England. And I have to say, this is probably my favorite one of theirs. I've heard pretty much all their albums. I think I'm still missing the first one, but this one, I was so glad to find a copy of this because this one pretty much captures everything they're about. The very Sabbathy production, cool desert rock, you know, like clean melodies and such. There's even an awesome Hammond organ lead-in on the song Shine, which is absolutely killer. This is all about riffs, you know, kind of bluesy leads, very gruff vocals. It has that sort of clutch boogie to it, but it kind of has the Caius atmosphere, and of course, Sabbath worship left and right. Incredible album. I absolutely love this one. Just the overall feel of it is just somehow energetic but chill. It's just kind of a stoner rock thing. They're really, really good at that. Definitely check this out. This is, in my mind, a classic in terms of like stoner metal from the late 90s. If you've never heard this, you're missing out because Orange Goblin are incredible. Their newer stuff's really good too, but this one right here, a gem. Check it out. Pile of Priests, self-titled. This came out this year on Extreme Metal Music. First I've actually heard of that label. This is a Denver-based death metal band. Looking into their Encyclopedia Metal profile, it said they were progressive death metal and they were death thrash earlier. I would say this is more melodic death metal. Like, it really doesn't scream progressive. Like, there's really not a lot of, like, you know, weird time signature changes or like a progressive writing style where it's written in movements. It's very straightforward. The riffs very much scream melodic death metal, or at least bands that border on it, like God Dethroned. Vocally, I really like the band in terms of the just kind of low, gruff vocals, but it's very intelligible. But I have to say, musically, and it might have to do with me being misled because, like I said, I looked at the profile before jamming it to progressive death metal. It's not that. I was just kind of let down a little bit. Like, there's some really decent songs in here, but overall, like, it feels kind of lackluster. Like, there's not a lot of really jump out at you moments on here. They do have a guest spot for a female vocalist on here from, I believe, Winds of Plague, and she does a really good job. She does cleans and harsh vocals, but again, nothing really jumped out at me on this. And I mean, even the cover seems like it's going to be heavier than it actually is. I do have to say, though, I do like the thrashier moments, and some of that leftover death thrash from their early days, I guess, still made it on here. But overall, it was a bit underwhelming. Still, I recommend checking it out. Form your own opinions. That's just me, just bitching about stuff. But who knows, you might really dig it. 7 Foot Spleen, Enter Therapy. This is the only release from this North Carolina sludge band, and it's pretty much straight up sludge metal, like very much in the vein of Weed Eater or Buzz Oven. Like, it has all the giant sludgy riffs, and they're really good. I really dig them. Very muted production, like you really got to turn this up. I have to say, though, I don't dig the vocals. They are just kind of a flat, you know, mid-range, throaty growl. Like, it sounds very dry, and just some effects on it I think probably would have helped, like just like a little bit of reverb or something to fill them out, but they just feel really flat. What I do like, though, is the music. The music on here is really solid, and this is a really long album. It's like an hour and 13 minutes, I believe. So you get plenty of music. And there's some really cool nods to, like, death metal in here, too. There's even some, like, slight D-beat sections, so it's not all that super slow sludge metal. But overall, pretty decent listen. You know, the vocals, yeah, they weren't great, and this band broke up not too long after this release. And one of the labels they released this through, because this is through TP Records, which I believe still exists, and MIA Records, which went MIA, and that's pretty much where, like, bands like Gaerea got started, and Atomic Bitchwax. So short-lived, interesting release. You know, I don't know if it's worthy of a retro review somewhere down the line, but who knows, maybe. But either way, check it out, form your own opinions. Like I said, there's some good stuff on here. Undersave. After the Domestication comes the Manipulation EP. This came out in 2008. This is the band's debut EP, and this is pretty much brutal death metal / Floridian death metal from Portugal, though. The style actually reminds me a lot of Hate Eternal or the Steve Tucker era of Morbid Angel, but you get some really nasty, like, kind of those chunky riffs that scream like Suffocation or Dying Fetus here and there. Solid, heavy production. It's a little muddy, but honestly, I kind of like the raw feel in this. And it doesn't sound poorly produced, it just sounds like it was deliberately murky. And there's even some little nods to black metal or black and death metal in here that I thought were really good. 6 tracks, all of them were solid. I think the last track in particular, Blood Eyes, which is 8 minutes long, just nasty as hell. It's a bit of a longer EP too, which is nice because generally EP is short and there's really not much to say about them. This one is, I think, over 20 minutes, so you get a fair amount of music. I'm definitely going to look for more of their stuff. I think they have 2 full lengths, and I'm definitely intrigued because this was a solid listen. I just kind of picked this up on the whim in a used bin. So yeah, definitely check this out. Asschapel, Fire and Destruction. This is this band's only release. It came out in 2003. I think this one is actually reissued, but I'm not really sure. It came out on Crimes Against Humanity record / distribution. This is an awesome blend of thrash metal, hardcore, death metal, maybe death grind. And my God, is it energetic. Like, this is flying at all times. The songs are very short. Like, I think there's only a couple of tracks here that clock over 2 minutes. The vocals pretty much alternate between two vocalists, one that's high, one that's low. It's all about delivering riffs and energy. Like, it screams all that hardcore, just nastiness, but you get some really cool death metal riffs. And there's actually some really cool, like, groovy pockets on here, too. You know, most of the time when I see tracks this short, it's like, okay, this is going to be a blast beat fest. But there's a lot of groove in here and just attitude. Like, this is awesome. As much attitude as you expect from a band called Asschapel. I mean, that's a great name. So yeah, pretty much it's like the band Ed Gain, especially on their last album, Bad Luck, and then mix that with like DRI. I absolutely love this album from start to finish. This was so much fun to listen to. This was a recommendation from a friend of mine on Facebook, and yes, you're right. This was incredible. I can see why you love this. Definitely check this band out. This album is just fun, front to back. Dig it. Gaerea, Unsettling Whispers. That's I was going to bring them up again. This is their first full length, and I honestly think this is even better than their new album, and their new album is absolutely incredible. This, I think, the writing stands out a little bit more. I think there's a little bit more variance. They don't labor the dissonance as much. I mean, of course, it's a huge part of their sound, but I think this one, it's played down in spots in favor of riffs and different kinds of hooks. I think the vocals have more variance, but they still capture that very not so quiet desperation. It's an amazing listen. These guys are really good and very similar to Mgla, but I think these guys have a little bit more in the way of like a larger production in terms of the overall sound. I absolutely love this album. Like, if I had heard this first, I mean, I don't think my review on Gaerea would have changed, but this had a bigger impact on me listening to it in terms of just the hooks and the feel and the atmosphere than Limbo did, and Limbo is incredible. This is even better than that, at least in my opinion. Definitely check this out. This one originally came out on Transcending Obscurity, and I strongly recommend you check out this one if you really like Limbo, because honestly, I think this one's a bit better, and at best, you're going to think it's at least on par with it. I'm pretty sure of that. Definitely check this out. Incredible listen. And finally, we have Faces of Death. This is a Russian death metal compilation, and looks like it's released with Megalith Records, Grotesque Sounds Productions, Criminal Negro Records. Yep, a lot of underground labels, a lot of underground Russian bands. A couple of them on here I actually have. Pyre, Grand, Cyst. Those are all ones I instantly recognize. But there's some other interesting ones in here that I really enjoyed. Septori, Labyrinths of Death was the track that was on here. And I believe it was Price of Death, which was just fierce bloodbath worship. And honestly, like, listening to this, these guys definitely take a lot of nods from Swedish death metal. Like, there are a lot of things in here that sound like Dismembered and Entombed and Bloodbath. Only a couple in here really reminded me of like more like Floridian death metal or any other style, really. Like, a lot of it just kind of labors the more Swedish style, which I love. And there's even some cool live tracks. I have to say though, I think a lot of these tracks are unmastered, so you definitely get a more raw sound overall, but definitely a cool little sampler. And I'm not entirely sure where I got this. In terms of ordering it, I don't remember actually ordering this, and I haven't been drunk and been on Discogs in a while, so I don't know what was that. So this might have been a mistake and sent to me, but either way, it's here. Hopefully I get what I actually ordered if it was that case, or maybe I did order this. I don't know. I order so much music, I screwed up probably. But either way, I got a pretty cool comp out of it, and yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in there, so definitely check it out. All right, well, that knocks out another one of these. Been pretty busy here lately. Glad you guys enjoyed our choose between two bands thing. That was a lot of fun to do. And we're going to get working on that Black Sabbath stuff here soon. And hopefully get around to introducing some new members of the Thralls, because we're ever growing. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We will catch you later.